So soil is another place that we like to get dirty in permaculture, because specifically it's the roots of all of our growing systems. It's the trees, the soil for our gardens, it's for our indoor plants, but it's also where we capture and store massive amounts of carbon. It's also where we capture and store massive amounts of water. And so the foundation of water management, water being again that most important factor in all of our design techniques, soil is one of those crucial elements as well. So understanding how the soil is built, how it grows, and how we impact it with the way that we live is really crucial. So if we look here at this top right image of all these little green circles, this is how a large amount of vegetables are grown all around the world. This is a center pivot well that's dug down to an aquifer that takes 36,000 years for water to replenish those aquifers, for a raindrop from the surface to make it down to the aquifer. And we pump that up and then spray it over these dry areas to grow vegetable crops. Now, because they're spraying them in the daytime, well, 80% of that water evaporates. And that water isn't just pure, distilled water. It's full of minerals and nutrients. And those minerals and nutrients now precipitate onto the crust or onto the soil, and they form a crust, a salt crust, not table salt, but mineral salts. And this, what you can see down the bottom left and in the middle image, this salinization of land, it actually ruptures the cells of the organisms, the bacteria. It makes the fungi are the only ones that can even do anything in salinated soil, but not at even certain levels without the organic matter. So that really destroys the ability of water to circulate in these ecosystems, and therefore kills a lot of the organisms that are there. So by growing vegetables at a fast-paced method of pumping up all this water and then irrigating simply when nature doesn't want water to fall from the sky, we are breaking some of the most fundamental soils around the world. We are destroying them, salinizing them, and desertifying them. Because if you look at this image again on the top right, the green circles, you'll also notice some of them that are white, or some rectangles that are white. Those are fully salinated and abandoned farms that nobody goes back to, because the current scientific way or soil science way of healing those is to just flush the salt with thousands and thousands of liters of water, and then it goes down into the aquifer, but at least you get a few more years of cultivation on the surface. Where in the Greening the Desert project, that soil was too salty to grow anything in. And what happens is, like the hoarder in your family who keeps all the good things for that time in life when you may need all those good things, right? They're important parts of the community. Well, the fungi are the same, and they hoard those salt molecules and those mineral salts, and they bind them up into their structure so that they can't interact with the water anymore. And then the healing process begins in that soil, and when those nutrients are needed, they're accessed through the mycelial network. So simply, when you look at these kinds of scales of problems, the solution here isn't even regenerative soil or any of that. Yes, we can go there, but the solution is just irrigation timers, to put the irrigation on at night. And you'll save 80% of the water usage. You will have no salinization of the soil, because the water will be absorbed into the soil before the sun comes in the morning. And if you did put a cover crop, a living cover crop, or a mulch over the top, well, then you'd actually be absorbing that moisture into that mulch and have healthier soil after every irrigation. So drip irrigation using living mulch covers over your soil, or dead mulch covers over your soil, is going to be the first thing that you can do. So before you even get your drip irrigation set up, get yourself a timer. I like the ones, they have a rain sensor. Those are the better ones. You can set them up so that your lawn is being irrigated, or your garden, or whatever it is being irrigated passively and at night. And ideally you have a drip tape or something like that that is underneath the mulch, and that is providing not municipal chlorine water, but rainwater. And if you do have a chlorine supply, what we do is we buy a charcoal chlorine filter. We put it in line on the irrigation line, and then it goes to the timer and the irrigation. So simple but huge change in your soil is to use drip irrigation and feed it directly into the mulch. The mulch, or the organic matter, is the armor of your soil. It helps to break sand down into clay particles and help remediate the sand. It helps to flocculate the clay, which means that the clay can be penetrated by roots and organisms. And it's the key to any healthy soil ecosystem, is covering it with organic matter. Now, don't go and buy cedar mulch because, first of all, it's antifungal, which is not good for the soil life, but also the colors in it are really not great. So in Nova Scotia, one of my dad's good friends, his apartment complex or condo complex burned down last summer because the black cedar mulch in the front yard, which is so full south facing, caught fire. It spontaneously combusted because it was black and because it was cedar. With the cedar preventing the mushrooms and mycelium from inoculating it, it prevents the water from being there, and it made it highly flammable. So you don't use that store-bought stuff. Get yourself some proper wood chips from a wood chipper, or grow some willows and make wood chips yourself, but just don't use that cedar pre-purchased or any of the colored mulches. So when you look at the soil science and the complexity of everything that's underground, it's really daunting when you think about all the nematodes, the springtails, the protozoa, the amoebas, all of these different things. And you do not need to know what they all do, how they do it, when they do it, and why they do it. What you need to know if you want to heal the soil and bring back the life is that they all eat somebody who eats somebody who eats somebody who eats mulch. Whether it's the carbon that was secreted by a plant when it's living, or the carbon that is in the tissue of the plant and it's dead, all of these organisms eat somebody who eats somebody who eats mulch. And so if you just brought organic matter back to the soil, you will heal over time the soil. There's obviously a next level that we can do. There's regenerative processes. We can inoculate. We can use compost teas. We can boost it and have really quick regeneration. But the basic principle here is get the organic matter back in the soil. So mulched gardens, I like to use two different kinds. This is actually University of Massachusetts. They have straw mulch on the beds and wood chip mulch in the paths. And I find that nice because it delineates the two. Rather than just wood chips everywhere, you get kids and dogs just walking wherever they want to walk. So you have two different colors of mulch can help, and that can be perfect. But see here, there's almost no bare soil in this garden. And in the areas that are bare soil, it's that they're still planting or just planted and haven't finished mulching. So if you're looking at more detail on living soil, one of the teachers who I studied with was Elaine Ingham. I did one of her intensive 3-day programs, but she has a full certification program as well. And she really looks at the living soil science. So there's all kinds of deep knowledge that you can get into there using soil microscopy and so on and so forth, if that's the kind of thing that you're interested in. If you just want to look at how to better soil in your own garden, one of the best ways to do so is through mushroom cultivation. These are indoor growing techniques, which is a great way to have food all winter. But there's one where you put specific species of mushrooms in those mulch beds in your garden, and that will boost soil health and really help to companion and give companion support to the different species that you have there as well. So that was just, we have an online course there. It's like $32 for you to delve into if you want to get into indoor and outdoor mushroom production. Lasagna Gardens is another great way to get started. For all of you who have dug gardens all your life, there's no more digging, if you will, if you want to let go of that. I do. You can build better soil the way the forest does, right? In the fall, we have the apples that land. The deer come eat half of them and poop everywhere. So you have apples and poop, which is your nitrogen layer. And then you have the dry leaves of the forest that land down on top of that. So that's your carbon layer. And that's lasagna gardening. It's a nitrogen layer, carbon layer, nitrogen layer, carbon layer. And this is how soil is built in nature. And so for us to go and dig out all the topsoil that's full of roots and colonies and all this vegetative material is completely counterintuitive. Use cardboard, make sure it doesn't have color on it, make sure it doesn't have tape and stickers on it, and make sure it's soaking wet. And then that's your carbon layer, and build nitrogen and so on and so forth further up. If that's the kind of stuff you're into as well, that's again the ecological gardening course. We get into a lot more techniques of no-dig gardening as well as companion planting and so on and so forth. And really, companion planting is not just putting basil with your tomatoes. It's designing habitat for squirrels so that they don't eat your tomatoes because they have what they need, and habitat for birds so that they actually are pest predators instead of eating all of your raspberries. And how do we create habitat for other creatures that are there to defend your garden when you're not anywhere nearby? So companion planting in a depth is much more than just planting tomatoes and basil together. If you're really interested in a lot of this, the late Toby Hemingway, a friend of mine, wrote Gaia's Garden, which is the most sold permaculture book on earth. It's a really great starting. It's really about garden scale permaculture, but there's a lot of really great information in that book. So I highly recommend that book as a starting point for everyone.